Welcome to Lydia Fenet's Claim Your Confidence, a podcast that will introduce you to the most powerful women in the world as they talk about their own confidence journey. No matter what obstacles you face, Claim Your Confidence will inspire you, motivate you, and give you a roadmap to live the life you want. So, are you ready to claim your confidence?
Welcome back to Claim Your Confidence, everyone. I am so delighted to have my guests here today. Carly and Danielle are not only incredible women who I've known for a number of years now, but they are also the co-founders of theSkimm. And in this interview, we are going to dive deep into what they did and what they are doing now and how they are literally changing the world for women everywhere. Danielle and Carly, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us, Lydia. We're so excited to be here.
Hi.
Well, thanks so much for being here. And I have to be honest, you're my first time ever having two guests. So this is going to be a juggling act, and I love a juggling act. So let's get in there. So I'm going to start with you, Danielle. Tell me a little bit about yourself when you were little.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Chicago. I have a little sister. We're 9 years apart. So we kind of had a chance to be kind of like only children a little bit, both of us. And I know Carly oddly had the same experience in a different way. And I say that because I think a theme that Carly and I both had was like having adult conversations early on, being expected to participate in what was going on in the dinner table. There was always the news on in the background. Chicago is a very, politically active city. There was just always kind of like this buzz about being in the know. And that's what I picked up on from an early age. Loved writing, loved anything to do with storytelling. Took many turns, including like community theater. And
I think we all might have that in our background.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Exactly. The musical theater part, someone should have told me earlier that was not going to happen. That was a clear no. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then went to Tufts, started to really kind of seriously hone in on journalism as a career, graduated, went to work at NBC News in DC. While I was studying abroad, my junior year in college, I did a trip and met someone named Carly Zakin in Italy. And I will pause there.
So we can find out a little bit more about Carly and how she too grew up in a family where it was almost like being an only child. So tell us, Carly, who were you when you were little?
So I grew up in New York City. I do have a younger brother who's 4 years younger. And while we are very close, we definitely both kind of had the experience of feeling like only children at times, where I think, as the older sibling, I wasn't good at sharing. And for better or worse, my parents kind of were like, okay, we're going to just have to like really give her a lot of attention. I think, I say that like jokingly, but I was actually really shy as a kid. And very, very like intentional of when I would kind of open up or like let people like see my personality. Otherwise, I was super quiet. I was always really studious. Like I stressed a lot about school, like at a young age, like way too young. I really like gravitated towards news, which is funny to think about like describing a kid that way. But truly, like if you look at my childhood diaries, but please don't look at them. But if you were, you would see that I literally wrote my diaries as if they were New York Times above the fold front page.
Stop it, really?
So do like the weather and the date and like a lead at like age 9.
But where did you learn that? Wait, we have to dig into that a little bit more. Where did you learn that? Were you reading newspapers at that age?
So my parents, got like the actual print newspaper every morning. They got the Journal and the Times every morning. And it was very much like a part of, seeing their routines with it. It's not so much that I actually would sit and read it. It just, to me, was like, okay, this is, when you are an adult, like how you get information. I used to watch.
This is what it looks like to be a grown up.
I used to watch the Today Show every morning, and I would be late for school. I idolized Katie Couric, and my parents used to be like, "You're running late," and I would be like 10. And I was like, and I knew like everything about that show. And 2020, and so all of these, amazing female newscasters, from Barbara Walters to Katie Couric to Diane Sawyer, were my idols. Like truly, I studied them. I wanted to be a news anchor. I wanted to be, I did acting classes, hoping that would like somehow lead there. I was very much like an English student, loved writing, like was in this, high school newspaper kind of thing. And then when I went to college, was very much like, I'm going to go maybe not into TV news, but into magazines. And I actually, like, my college application was, I literally made a magazine. Like,
so
like
this has been
but,
preordained. Your entire life has already been planned
so
from the age of 9.
So you can see the theme here. But
yes, exactly.
yeah, and so flash forward, I ended up also taking a trip to Italy as a study abroad program. Met a friend named Danielle, and then the rest, I'm sure we'll get into, is history.
This is such an amazing story because there's so often that I have these interviews with women and they start off and there might be one or two small things that ultimately help them become who they are. But it's very rare that two individuals have started at the earlier part of their life and decided that this is something they're going to get into and then kind of pursued it on parallel paths in a way, not only making fake newspapers, but also creating, these ideas, but also your joint theater love, even though short-lived as it was, perhaps.
I will give Danielle the theater credit. I actually didn't get a role in the play. I was forced to be stage manager, but I really liked acting.
This is the first time I've heard Carly mention that, so I just learned
Well, I used to do
new.
acting classes a lot, like in middle school, but it didn't pay off.
Well, you guys are still young. There's plenty of time, by the way,
Thank you.
Just so you know. There are second and third chapters in life, so perhaps that is. So you go to Italy. You're both in Italy. So how did you guys meet? I feel like this is a dating show. How did you guys meet?
So we went to separate colleges. We both did a program through Temple University in Rome. Probably, like, I want to guess 150 kids or so on the program. There was no internet, like, in your dorm or apartment, wherever you were staying. So you had to be at, like, the school kind of student center to, like, get on Wi-Fi or internet. Okay. And we both, I think, were doing that and like literally both looking up where the best fried artichokes are in Rome. Very specific.
So were you next to each other on the computers and you saw this?
I don't know if we were next to each other, but we were like part of the same conversation of like, where do you find the artichokes?
So interesting. It all started there.
It all started with artichokes.
And so then what happens next? Because the next conversation was not, we found a place, let's go start the Skimm.
So then, we had a lot of fun in Italy. And we both went back to school, graduated, got jobs, and then wound up working at NBC News.
And you were both at NBC News?
Yeah, in different parts and kind of crisscrossed jobs between New Jersey, New York, DC.
It stayed in
always
touch?
In news. Yeah, we stayed in touch and we became friends when we were both working in DC in news. And that was kind of the beginning, I would say, of the next phase, which was becoming friends as adults, if I can call the like 23-year-old version of me. And the professional part came in more so. We were both in DC for a bit, and then I moved to New York. Carly moved back to New York, where she's from. We became roommates in a very small apartment in the Village, both working for NBC News at 30 Rock. And we started to kind of explore these themes that we were both seeing. And I think as roommates, it's really hard to escape when kind of like you're coming home to something every single day. And what we saw was that we loved what we did. We were definitely products of starting off young in kind of a recession environment. So, we graduated college in 2008. No one was getting jobs. If you were, it was really hard to keep a job. We were really cheap. We got to do a lot of things really quickly. And then it was kind of like you look around and it was wait in line for a really long time to get one of a very few openings. At the same time, there was this disconnected audience strategy, thinking about how do you reach people that are younger? How do you reach women? And there didn't seem to be a really authentic, compelling way to do that. Carly and I loved news. We were news geeks. We saw this and as friends would talk about it. And then we would just kind of get more and more serious about what if we started something on those kind of like threads of an idea. And for a while it was called like Project TBD. That was literally like the folder that we shared. And that's how eventually, we ended up quitting our jobs and starting the company from our living room couch.
Take me back to Project TBD. What was in that folder?
We had this one report actually from years and years ago about how women were falling behind in terms of current events knowledge. And that was really annoying.
Interesting.
And, looking back on it, I wish I could find that report again, because I feel like it probably didn't diagnose why, which is what we spend so much time talking about now, which is, what is the mental load? What are the expectations on women? What are they taking care of? Especially in this 20, 30, 40s where you have both your kids, yourself, and your parents kind of depending on you in different ways at the same time. Yeah. But there were pieces of information around the strength of this demographic of women. We started off really focusing on millennial women. It's the generation we're part of. We were feeling this firsthand. And I think also probably some stuff on their spending power. And again, these are all
I feel
things
like I remember those reports starting to come out too about that was definitely a drumbeat around that time about women being not even the earners, women being the spenders who had all the control in their wallet. That's interesting.
Exactly. So I think it was a lot on that, some logo mock-ups, and we were like, okay, let's go. I honestly don't think there was much more.
That's pretty much
it. How old were you guys at this point? Do you mind if I ask?
I was 26. Danielle would like me to tell you that she was 25.
This is true.
For the record. Danielle was 25 and Carly was 26.
Yes,
very
correct.
Important. And so you just took this leap of faith and you decided, what did that look like? Did you call everyone you knew and you're like, we're quitting our jobs at NBC, which is, by the way, a highly reputable news organization, to start a daily newsletter? What did this entail? Because I love hearing the beginning of the stories, and I feel like those are the parts that we all don't hear right now. How did it all start? I mean, what did that take for you guys to make that decision as two people? Because that's the other part. I mean, you guys are co-founders. What does that look like?
I'll answer the first part. There's sort of two things I think to know about us. One is we are both very goal oriented and can be really stubborn when we have our kind of mind set on something. And this was something that there was just no talking us out of. It was this. And our parents thought we were crazy. They literally did phone calls to talk about they're so crazy. Yeah, haha, they didn't know each other. And they're like, what are they talking about? They're going to start a business. And they pretend that didn't happen, but we heard it. I think the other thing to know about us is we both are very I think big believers in signs and kind of look for the thing that will push us over the edge. So there were two signs that kind of happened. One was that, to your point, we had really good jobs. We were on the track. This was not, we didn't start the company because we were I can't wait to go leave to start my own thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We would have been very happy, riding the corporate ladder. It just wasn't ultimately where we could best serve this audience and seize the opportunity. And so for me, I was on a show that they switched the show I was on to something else. And it was the first week of July. And I was like, this is my sign.
This is it.
This is not what I should be doing. And then the following week, Danielle's promotion got delayed. That was her sign.
Yeah.
And we literally both gave notice within, I actually recently found the email of me giving notice, the formal notice, where I was I'm going to go work on a new endeavor and I hope to stay in touch.
Oh gosh. How professional.
We were joking. It was like ChatGPT.
No, it was so dorky and awkward and
you
really
Google
formal.
How to resign from a company and then just cut and paste it. Yeah. I prefer that. Now they come with emojis. My friends have sent pictures and letters of people who've resigned in her company recently, and it's one of my favorite things to see. It's really a different beast. So I encourage everyone to.
I will say my letter was quite lovely.
What do you do? Yeah.
Oh, there was one I saw recently where there was a woman who she went back and forth, up and down, waving goodbye, and it said "Hasta la vista." Check me out on social media.
Oh my
And I just
God.
remember thinking, like, don't,
Mine
if
was
anyone's
the
listening,
opposite
please
of
don't do
that.
that.
Yeah, mine was
Yes,
the
do what
polar
Carly did.
opposite
Do what
of that.
Carly did.
No, and so then we literally started, July 18th of 2012, and that was it.
July 18th of 2012. So you hang your shingle on the door. The Skimm is open. What is the first thing that you send out? What did you start with? What did you launch with?
So we launched with the Daily Skimm email newsletter. And that was, our only product for years because the company was the two of us. And we would write at night in shifts, and then we would sleep a little bit once it went out at 6, and then we would try to get the business off the ground during the day.
And
And
what did
for a
that
long
entail, getting the
time,
business off the ground? You're just trying to get in advertisers and talk me through
no.
that.
Yeah, so we actually didn't take advertising for a while, which was both kind of a strategic move, and also just we had no clue how to set it up. So it like kind of
Good
helped.
enough reason.
Yeah, getting the business off the ground meant two things. The first was really a grassroots push to get people to know about what the Skimm was and to sign up. And I think that at the time we got really good advice, which was like, when you're starting and you want to show proof of concept, you can either show it in two ways. The first is to get like 1 million people to sign up, or it is to start generating revenue. And we were like, it seems like given our skill set, it's easier to go for getting, that really big number of people to sign up rather than trying to start monetizing what we're going to do right away. So we would sneak into like Equinox gyms and leave like little postcards. We printed out shirts for our friends and then mailed it to them across the country. We would go, like to a spin studio and leave little signups. We did a college tour, meaning we were not good drivers then at all. So we would drive to different schools, set up on like the walk, the main part of the campus, hand out flyers, wear our Skimm t-shirts, like bring a sign up sheet, because I feel like we didn't have the iPads that had like the Wi-Fi built in, and we weren't official guests, so we couldn't get on to like the school's Wi-Fi.
You probably couldn't pay for it at that point either because you didn't have a budget for your company. No, you're not paying for Wi-Fi.
I remember one time Carly dropped me off at the campus and I ran in and like snuck into a building and put like Skimm flyers under doors. And it really like was like that. And then we would try to get press. So we would meet with like any editor, anyone who had built a brand, and just talk about it, what we had done. And we did that for like a solid year. At the same time, we knew that, we had a couple $1,000s saved up. We knew we had to take on funding to get this off the ground. And so that was the other side of conversations that we were having too.
Because people were agreeing to give money in those early days? I mean,
no, they were not agreeing to give money. I'm like, that sounds very nice. I would like to say yes, but we have a spreadsheet of like hundreds of names in red who said, no, I will not give you money. I don't think this is a good idea. Go build a pretty app. Like, why? Email is dead. Why are you emailing me? Women aren't a big enough target market. Like all of these things. And eventually we met the right team. And again, it was a duo, which we felt like was a sign. We were their first New York-based investment. And that is when we started to build our team.
So this entire podcast is about confidence and claiming your confidence. And you have a spreadsheet of no's. So what did it take to keep going back? You have your parents who are calling each other and in jest being like, what are our daughters doing? And you're not 21 at this point. You're in your mid-20s and people's careers are starting to take off, and you're driving around in cars to college campuses, stuffing things in people's mailbox. So what does it feel like when people are saying no to something you truly believe is right and will work out one day, and you just have to get them to see it? What does that take?
So I think there are two things in our favor. One is like, I honestly have no idea how an entrepreneur does that. Keeps going. I mean, if they don't already have a product out in market that they're getting feedback on. because we had the, we're going to call it luxury of getting all these no's, but yet getting thousands of signups every day from users and people writing in being like, where's this been all my life? This is what I've been waiting for. Can I work for you? Can I be a Skimm ambassador? How can I help? So for every no, we had literally thousands of people saying, yes, give me more. That was like a really good equalizer in emotions. And so then I think the second thing is like, going back to we're very, goal oriented and can be stubborn. I think we honestly both had this attitude of like, that scene in Pretty Woman, like big mistake. like I was like,
Huge.
like you're going to say no to me. I'm like, big mistake. Like you're going to regret that. And, not to say that there weren't times that like we broke down and like, I remember getting one no and I really thought we were going to get a yes. And like, it was a Friday afternoon. I just remember sobbing in my bed and being so tired and being like, please God, like, why are you saying no? But I would say for the most part, we kind of were just like, you're going to regret that.
And you knew it on the inside.
I think now it's a lot easier to be like, when you feel like that calling, you have to do it because we've done it and we've, created something out of nothing. But I do look back on it as a very specific moment in time where I think we had the foresight that it was always going to be really hard, but that it was never going to be easier than it was at that moment. And I think that is something that I say to people a lot, which is like doing anything that hasn't been done before or doing anything, entrepreneurial at all. It's really hard and it's a lot harder than you ever imagine. And I think that's like a protective mechanism. It's kind of like if you knew how hard it really is, you probably wouldn't do it. I think that's a blessing kind of that you can't understand it. And at the same time, that's why I think to be successful, you have to have this ability to focus, to block out like noise, and also a support system. And I think as you get older, that means a lot of different things depending on what your situation is.
And you were in your mid-20s when you started this. So how many years until you really, when did you hit the $1 million threshold? So that was the first thing. So, you get 1 million subscribers. How long did that take?
It took, so we had 500,000 subscribers at our 1-year anniversary. And and
that's all just handing out flyers?
It was word of mouth completely.
I remember getting it. I remember getting somebody in my office, a younger woman who is probably your age. She definitely said to me, she's like, have you heard about this thing called theSkimm? I was like, no. And I remember reading it on the subway on my way back from Christie's to my apartment. And I was like, oh, this is great. Because it, especially in a world when I was in events and taking auctions and out every night, it was just enough information for a cocktail party. I had all the information I needed at my fingertips and I could read it on my way to work. It was such a genius concept. Okay, so you're at 500,000 your first year.
I think I said that wrong. I think we were like 300,000 our 1-year anniversary. We were 500,000 when we closed our funding a few months later, and then $1 million 6 months after that. So it was about a little over a year and a half to get to 1 million users. And I remember one of our first employees, we were like, we need to get to 1 million users. And he was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And we were like, we need to do it in a year, and we did it in 6 months. So that was pretty insane.
That's incredible. Did you have a big party at 1 million users?
We had champagne.
That must have been really fun.
We would open a bottle of champagne. Yeah, we opened a bottle of champagne for every 100,000 users. So we had like a big bottle for that one.
You have 1 million subscribers. People are now investing. What happens next in this situation? Because now you have a real business that people have noticed, they're investing in. I mean, this has got to feel exciting, but also a little nerve-wracking because, again, you're creating it out of nothing.
I think then the hardest part happened, which is we started building a team and hiring people and asking them to give up their sense of security to join us on this crazy journey. And part of that is becoming managers for the first time, stepping into the role that isn't just a founder role, it's a CEO role. And for us, it's co-CEOs. And that is, I think, the hardest part about starting a company is it's one thing to believe in it yourself and be focused yourself. It's another thing to be able to communicate and lead and motivate other people. And I think we always thought we were good communicators, and then we hired people And I was like, I have no clue how to communicate, apparently.
Apparently. I guess that someone told you that then? Was that is that how you realized that? Or you just...
years of executive coaching and feedback cycles. And I think a huge credit to our early employees for giving us that feedback. And I highly recommend it's hard. It's really hard to become a good manager. And I do think that is something people are better at kind of innately, maybe than we were. I think that is, I would say, something that you might get more out of in a big company, because we had never managed anyone. So I think everything else you can kind of like learn on the fly and be like, I've never done it before. It's all new. But when you're doing that with someone else's career, that's tough.
Yeah.
So we, definitely leaned on our advisors, our board members, mentors, to ask questions. Everything from, how will you interview this person? I think that they're the right person for the job, but I'm not really sure, to how do you give feedback? How do you do a review? All of these things that, we left a big company when we were 25. We hadn't actually been through that many formal review cycles.
And so how do you guys deal as co-founders with your with each other? I mean, it has to be great to have someone who's a resource and a friend and all of those things, but there also have to be moments where you're coming at things from different angles. Like what strategies do you guys use as co-founders to get through those times when you may not see things on the same way?
I think some of the best advice that we got early on, Danielle, correct me, but I think a lawyer told us to do this, was they were like, go get a bottle of wine and talk about all of the hard stuff. And basically to treat it, people always say like, starting a company with somebody is like a marriage, and like, people use that metaphor, but like it pretty much is when you think about like, you're going to be sharing all of your financial information with somebody. You're going to share an accountant and a lawyer in the beginning. Like you're really like exposing kind of all of your things to somebody, and like there has to be a foundation of trust. And so really early on, before like taking in a dollar of investment, like we sat down and had the conversation as if it was like a prenup, basically. What happens if you need a break? What happens if I need a break? What happens if we disagree? What happens if this happens? Like kind of just went through the list and of hypotheticals. And that was really helpful, because what it did was, and I would tell anybody starting a business with somebody, you have to have that conversation, because one, like in our case, like we are equal partners in this. We came in with the same amount of very little money. And
we brought nothing to the table.
So that made it easy. And that's not the case for, certain co-founders, or maybe it's not a 50-50 situation. But it was really clear, like this is kind of the ownership structure, and this is also how we're going to make decisions. And that's always been our red line. And like, I can't tell you how many times, we once interviewed a lawyer who like, I remember Danielle went to the bathroom and he tried to like convince me to like go against something she wanted to do. And I was like, big mistake. He's not our lawyer.
Yeah. You're like, we are the Friends episode where we all stick together.
And I think, there's been employees that haven't worked out because they like try to, do that, or investors we didn't take on, and partnerships we haven't taken on because we're like, here is like the red line. And it works for us. I don't know if that works for everybody else. I think it's really hard to find good examples of strong co-founder relationships. We're not like saying it's so easy, but I think that foundation of like, here it all is. And, ultimately we're like, how do we make decisions? It's kind of like, one, we have the same goals, and we do an annual process checking in of like, are these still our goals? And those goals have changed over time. And two, like, really, I mean, it sounds almost simplistic, like laughably simplistic, but it's like, if one of us cares that much about something, then like that person wins.
Yeah. Well, that's great though. But I think that also goes back to just being friends at the core. Like you're business people, but you're also human beings, and you have to like the person you work with. I would assume you wouldn't want to be a co-founder with someone that you didn't want to spend time with. And so if someone really does care about something, I would think, and even in a business setting, you want to honor that in a way and make sure that they feel seen and respected as well. So you're in your 20s. This is all sort of moving along. And then What happens after you get to the part where you stop just being an email? How did you move into that next phase of the Skimm?
We built our app, which is subscription based, and we really thought about, we've always been obsessed with people's routines and women's routines and what they use to be efficient or manage their time. And so we all really live by our calendars. And so we thought about how can we program that so that as you're going about your day, you're not missing something. And along that point in time, we started to monetize. So we brought on kind of our first big sponsor partners, JP Morgan, the NBA. We worked with Buick, these really great, supportive, huge companies who saw the, I think, promise in what we were building. And that started to, I think, shape us into a different type of team. And I remember, the first time we did a big ad deal, we went out and we bought everyone their own laptops because up until that point, we were like asking them to bring their personal one into work. I think also we switched offices. So we moved from basically a one room. It was technically 2 rooms, meaning the second room was like a coat closet, but we made that a conference room. And we moved into a slightly bigger space, and it felt like, I remember, like building the desks, and it just felt kind of like that montage scene for a while on when there's like a fast forward in a movie and you see, these new faces coming in with desks and joining the team. I feel like that phase, we parted ways with people for the first time. It was really, I think, kind of when the boot camp of going to business school, law school, grad school, management school, all in one kind of started, where it felt like this is no longer the two of us bootstrapping it. This is like we are a real company that's accountable to people.
In order to learn these skills, and you're learning them on the fly, were you walking into that feeling a little bit like, what am I doing? Or did you feel confident at that point?
I think that there was a certain very real sense of, we asked a lot of people for advice. We made a lot of mistakes. We said a lot of, inadvertently the wrong things in terms of not being clear, not setting goals, not, understanding how to give direction or feedback. I do think that we were always honest about what we were good at, and that was building a brand. It was writing. It was telling a story, a narrative. I think, we didn't give ourselves enough credit at the time, but it was about really ideating on a model of advertising and what we did, which was, everyone was doing display and programmatic, and we were doing really high quality native sponsorship and building a huge following. Everything else, we were super honest that we were learning for the first time. And I think that might not have made us any better at it, but I think that there was an authenticity that like our intentions are in the right place and we're asking for help. And, if you're signing up on this journey with us, like this is kind of the con to it. Like this is
what you're doing. But I think you're right. I mean, being authentic about that, I'm sure, was a relief to a lot of people because they didn't feel like you were just making up things on the fly as you went along.
I don't know if it was a relief. I think that especially our earliest team had a lot of patience.
Oh, that's good. That's another way to do it.
Yeah,
then,
I mean, truly, like I think we were thankful about that at the time. I don't think we had the perspective to be as thankful as we are today about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you started the Skimm, you were in your mid-20s, and now you have gone through
we are not.
What is one of now you are in your late 20s. One thing that I can say personally was a fundamental shift for me when I was working was having children. I had 3 children while I was working, all within 4 years. I took the maternity leaves that were given by Christie's, which were 3 solid months, like generous policies at the time. But this has really become something, as you two have had your own children, we've gone through COVID. This has become a platform that I think has really shown the Skimm to be deep and very caring towards women and moving this conversation forward. You did a State of the Women campaign that you launched, obviously, in March. You've also done an incredible initiative that I've seen all over my social media feed called Show Us Your Childcare Initiative, which from someone who had none of those things from the back end, I remember my pumping room was in a completely different office. I ended up just pumping in my office with my team because otherwise I would have been gone for 45 minutes every time I had to pump every day. Things like that. When I remember saying those 10 years ago to people, and people would just be like, wait, what? And now the fact that people show us their childcare is incredible to see. And I can't even imagine how many people feel so incredibly grateful to you for having started this. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about having children, and then talk to me about what you've done with both the State of the Women campaign and also the Show Us Your Childcare initiative.
Well, I don't have children yet, so Danielle can touch on the first part, but there's a few reasons and ways that we like to talk about this topic. And one is that it doesn't matter whether or not we have kids or not, or if we were female CEOs or male CEOs. It's as important that male leadership needs to step up in this capacity. I think the second is that we could, have a conversation around, I experienced X, therefore my policies are Y, or I hope to experience something and I want to create policies around that. We actually like to look at it from an economic argument. Women are the single most important demographic to our economy. If we don't keep us in the workforce, we're screwed. We're losing over $3 trillion to our economy. If we don't encourage her to have children, we are going to be a society with a declining birth rate. That is not good. And these aren't hyperbolic statements. These are very real threats to our economy. And so when we started Show Us Your Leave, which was around the lack of national paid family care, it opened up the door for us to have a conversation around how do you think about companies' policies as an employer and as an employee. And I think what we all know, especially, we're talking now 3 years after a pandemic started, you don't know what's going to happen. What you can guarantee is if you are at a job for a length of time, life is going to happen. Some of that life is going to be hopefully really great, and maybe a wedding, maybe a celebration, maybe the birth of a child. And some of it's going to be really hard, and maybe it's going to be a divorce or a death or a pregnancy loss. You don't know, but you want to work at a company that is there for you in those moments. And one of the ways that a company can show that is through policies like paid family leave, which we're very much intentionally calling paid family leave and not maternity leave, because it's as important for the partner to take that leave. It's just as important to have a strong policy there as it is to have strong healthcare benefits, as it is to have strong childcare benefits. And so that actually brought us to our latest campaign called Show Us Your Childcare, where, and I think, Danielle, I'll let you jump in because, you've spoken really personally about this, but this is another example of driving women into the ground. We did this State of Women survey, a pulse on our audience, and she is not doing well. And it's not funny, and it's not oh, she's multitasking. How does she do it all? It's she is crumbling, and this is an economic threat. So Dan, I'll let you, on that really exciting note, I'll let you talk about childcare.
Great. So I had 2 babies in 2 years. I had 2 under 2, both pandemic babies. And I felt like it's all hard. And I think that it is all hard, degrees of hard is what my experience was. No matter the amount of support you have, it's just never enough. And I was taking all that I could get. At the Skimm, we do have a generous family leave policy, but I think also there's something about having a kid in a pandemic that just introduces a whole different level of anxiety and questioning as parents and partners. And I really felt what our audience is feeling and showed up in our State of Women report, which is a data-driven report in partnership with Harris and corresponding kind of assessment of that from the Skimm. And what we found is that, 73% of millennial women felt just completely overwhelmed by the demands of being a parent. And 64% of women are tired of trying to be a super mom, super wife, and or super employee. And I definitely felt that. Women are expected to try to have it all. And I think that's from, generations in front of us showing us that we could have multidimensional parts of ourselves. And that's amazing. But I think it's impossible to have that all at the same time, especially without support from your community, financial support, government support, all of these things. And we don't have it in this country.
Yeah.
So what that's left with is a severely broken childcare system, and it doesn't support parents. It doesn't support the amazing caregivers in that system, and it doesn't support kids. And, there are a lot of women in different forms of that kind of cycle who are paying the price. It's the lack of quality, affordable childcare is pushing moms out of the workforce. It was a huge part of COVID. It's limiting opportunities for advancement. It's costing us, it's so expensive. And if you want to be able to put in more at work, you have to have someone taking care of your kids. And I don't mean taking care of your kids flippantly. I mean taking care of them so that your mind is at ease. And that is a whole different level of support that, doesn't get kind of captured in, picking up and dropping off from daycare. It is knowing that you can focus because your kids are safe and being cared for and being nurtured. And a lot of that, happens in or around the home. And so it goes unseen. And when you think about that, I think so often, because it's not transparent, it's not visual, it's not in front of our faces, it doesn't get talked about. And this is the case for women kind of at all spectrums of their career, is like they are adding on, if they're able to, more and more help. And yet it's not something that is glorified as helping you. There's still this expectation. And what I felt was kind of like I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't doing it, the best that I could. And I just constantly felt like I was completely overwhelmed. And that was something where I got to step back and really think about, I'm really tired. I am going to either get myself and my family more help to be able to show up. And that kind of puts me down a spiral of, well, I have the help, but I feel bad about it, which doesn't help anyone. Or I'm going to deny myself the help and then be even more exhausted and not be able to show up for my kids.
Yeah.
No, that cannot be this kind of like moment that we're in. And the more I started to talk about it, the more that, I realized that I felt like I was inadvertently part of the problem, because people would comment to me, like when they would see pictures of me working or pictures of my kids, it was like, I don't know how you do it all. And I don't. I definitely do not. I don't feel like I do. I don't think that should be the expectation, even though for myself, I still feel like it is. And certainly if you think I'm doing it all, it is because I have had the resources and support that are very expensive and very time consuming to be able to do it. So there's a whole team behind me, and not enough people have that.
What's been so incredible about the evolution of the Skimm is how you guys have shown yourselves time and time again to be open to other people seeing what's behind the scenes and being vulnerable and sharing, even in the stories that you're telling about the beginning of your company. And then not only sharing these stories, but then doing something about it. And I think that is what has clearly made you guys so successful, and what has made the Skimm so successful, because you can see it. And not only can you see you guys doing it, but you can also see what it took to get there. And so I know that the listeners of this show will appreciate that. I certainly appreciate that as someone who's been in the working world for over 2 decades. So what can we expect next from the Skimm? What do we see from you guys coming next? And how do we keep up with you?
Well, first of all, I appreciate everything you just said. It means a lot. And I think it actually speaks very much to what you can expect from the Skimm going forward, which is, it's not so much that we are, we've opened the door around like the vulnerability behind the story, but it's actually, we are her. Like we are you. Like we we as individuals are going through the same stuff and the same worries. And, what we're talking about with this generation of women, when we say like we are the most important demographic to our economy, it means that everyone needs to be paying attention. And what's happening right now is it's not working for her. It's not working for her at work. It's not working for her at home with the amount of responsibilities that she has. And it's, fundamentally, there are just structures in place that are not designed for her. And so what our mission at theSkimm, what has stayed the same, is we make it easier to live smarter. And what we've been doing over these last few years is really helping her navigate kind of all of the unsexy stuff that we all deal with. And it's the stuff that we all had those moments and, like, why did I take a class on this in college? And so, today theSkimm, we obviously have been there to help her, with understanding her information and news and her voting opportunities. But we also then moved into personal finance, and now we're in health, and we're launching into her family, and we've been helping her with her purchasing decisions. And so what you'll see is a lot more of us helping her, helping you, helping us make decisions in the most important areas of our lives.
I love it. Well, I know I can't wait to see what happens next as this happens. Obviously, as I said, I'm a couple of years older than you guys, but I'm still looking to you for insight and wisdom along the way. So I cannot thank you guys enough for being here today. Obviously, you have so much on your plate. So even just spending this time speaking with me, it's such a pleasure. It's wonderful to see you both thriving. I'd like to also thank Rockefeller Center for having us today, Newsstand Studios, and my amazing producer, Joe, without whom nothing happens. I'd like to leave our listeners with one question. We talk about opening the door for other people. What are you doing to open the door for the people around you and behind you? How are you sharing your story in a way that's going to inspire them to understand a little bit more about the life that you're living and the life that they could be living too? Anyway, I'm Lydia Fenet. This is Claim Your Confidence. Tune in again next week. But in the meantime, have a wonderful week. And I hope you enjoyed this episode.